municipal management should actually be professionalized, so that we don't have a situation where a municipal that is afflicted with corruption, after a particular point in time, the so-called municipal manager who was involved gets appointed in another town, in another province, as a municipal manager. So we wanted some kind of a professional code in this regard. But in the main, was to give them support and also to appreciate the challenges of local government in which we needed to campaign about as the Communist Party. Unfortunately, the two leading members of this team did not stay long after our local government elections last year. There's a campaign, comrades, again, for shelter and housing. This is part of the leaders of Comrade Krizani, the Triple H campaign, health, hunger, housing. There's been a massive evictions of our people in the urban areas, particularly in the big cities, Johannesburg being the leading one, and all other big metros. We need to roll out a clear campaign against evictions. The General Secretary spoke to this question, politicizing it a bit with regard to whether the challenge is lack of land or lack of finance for housing. Our comrades have done very well in different provinces. They've made strategic interventions, particularly when it came to the question of evictions. We have some of our comrades who are here, Comrade Kinsibia, who was even given the opportunity to address the 13th Congress Central Committee on the question of evictions, wherein the capitalist banks will evict people from their houses and go and sell it in auction for 10 rand. A mere 10 rand. And we have demonstrated that, we have given proof, and some of them have been reversed. But in other areas where there's no party presence and there's no campaign against evictions, people have been removed from their houses. And that is why we've said this question of the 20-year mortgage on housing must be revisited. When you buy a car, you are forced to pay it between 4 and 6 years. But when you buy a house that is even cheaper than a car, they extend it to almost 20 years. In the 12th year of that period, a worker gets retrenched. The banks take away their house. They don't even care that you have paid so much over a 12-year period. And in most instances, you find that the original amount of the cost of that house have long been paid out. So this campaign must be invigorated, comrades, going forward. I'm going to jump some of the section that deals with commemorations. Comrades can read into that. The Krizani commemoration and a series of them. Suffice to say, it is very important to announce to Congress that the gravesite of our former General Secretary, the late Comrade Krizani, has been declared a national monument. This is a great victory. Now, every South African can visit that gravesite and interface with Comrade Chris and the life of our party, because he represents that symbol of the life of our party and commitment to the working class, revolutionary working class struggle. Therefore, we want to thank our government for making this declaration. In particular, we want to thank Comrade Dumankosi, a member of our party and our movement, who, when he was the mayor, we engaged with him and ousted him for this process. And he initiated the process. And equally, we want to thank Comrade Mondli Gungubele, who further made sure that this thing became a reality. Today, we now have a monument, and we hope that the city of Ekurhuleni will take care of that monument. And our communists in Gauteng and elsewhere, particularly in Ekurhuleni district, Opa Pasha district, must also take care of that monument of our General Secretary. It's a monument of socialism, contribution of struggle towards socialism. We have launched another campaign, comrades. You will realize that there have been many campaigns that the Communist Party has been launching. That is why we can attest without fear of contradiction that the Communist Party is the most active and campaigning political organization in South Africa. No one beats us. Across sectors of society, even the trade unions, they know we equal their sectors in terms of the campaigns. And this is what we think needs to be celebrated going forward. We launched a program, comrade, to rebuild the non-racial character of the SACP and our movement and our society. This campaign is extremely important because the new entrants into the stage of non-racialism have created an impression that our movement is a narrow nationalist movement. And if you look at this variant of capital, the parasitic bourgeoisie, they use some of our own comrades to create a narrow Africanist conception of our revolutionary movement or character. We must defeat that and be committed to continue to build an unracial character of our movement. Many martyrs of our revolution, Joe Slovo and others, didn't care about the color of skin of an individual. They cared about the working class. That is why at some point, Namapunu begas atideg. Akabangut no lo Slovo lo the way along a corner aksum umsob. Open Martins Comrade Angol. Uyayaz lentole when they tortured him, Amapunu, they were asking him this question. Awusitshele lo Slovo kahle kahle isithakazelo sakhe ubani. Because they didn't believe that this Slovo was the chief of staff of Umkhonto weSizwe, the most feared by the Boers, was actually a white man. Now, our movement cannot recede and degenerate. The Communist Party, the first non-racial organization, not only in South Africa but on the African continent, must keep up this legacy. Therefore, that campaign, comrade, must be rebuilt all throughout our country. We have indicated there some of the work that we have been doing in this regard in order to revitalize this particular section of our work. We also launched, comrades, a campaign to clean our communities and to protect our environment. This campaign was also adopted by government, where we declared one national Mandela Day program to clean our country. It was initiated by the Communist Party. We must take up this campaign consistently and clean our townships and our villages. So therefore, the commissions, don't say we are burdening you with lots of commission work, of campaigns work, but we are just reflecting some of the work that the Central Committee has been doing throughout the country, which have elevated themselves into campaign platforms. We participated in many campaigns and cleaning activities. In the section that deals with activities of provinces, you will see where, for instance, some of the comrades have given us pictures of the work that they were doing, cleaning various communities, crèches, schools, hospitals, and so forth. And I think that is extremely important. When we did the Joe Slovo commemoration, for instance, we went to clean Chris and Baragwanath Hospital. Don't you like this combination? When we were celebrating the life and times of Joe Slovo, we went to clean from the graveside of Comrade Joe Slovo. We went to clean Chris and Baragwanath Hospital. That was beautiful. We spent the whole day there in the wards, everywhere else, cleaning. This should be done consistently by the Communist Party, our branches, our district, and so forth. We're also calling for mass activism, comrades, to defeat drugs in our society. In particular, Nyaupe and Mercedes-Benz drug. Yes, Mercedes-Benz. Nayas Mercedes-Benz. Uban Lomtwana Wegi member Young Communist League. Sega a popular manje. She's a singer. Babes Wotum. Yes, I think she's from the Young Communist League. When they become popular, sometimes we lose touch. She was a member of the Young Communist League. Babes Wotum. Ukula ngaye lento le crisis ye Mercedes. It's a drug. Nyaupe, Mercedes, and others. We must have a campaign to make sure that these things are defeated and rooted out in our communities, particularly because we also know the people who sell them in our communities. Our campaign for reliable, accessible, affordable, and integrated and safe public transport system must continue, including the fight against e-tolls. This is a very important program. I'll jump these other sections, comrades, and deal with another section that deals with the program that we need to create to build and strengthen industrial unions of COSATU, as well as the public sector unions. This is extremely important, given the challenges faced by our trade union movement today. At the same time, we must working with the public sector unions to make sure that there's implementation of the national health insurance. There is nobody in this country that can claim the national health insurance than the Communist Party. It's our campaign. We started this campaign of the national health insurance. We always say, comrade, with due respect, that when these campaigns are launched, are adopted by the African National Congress, we want to give glory to our movement, the People's Movement, the African National Congress, and to our government and relevant ministers. We want to give them the glory to implement these programs. But the public health campaign was started by the Communist Party. In its core basis, one of its outcomes was the national health insurance, when Comrade Manto Chabalala Msimang was still the Minister of Health. Now it's been implemented at a slow pace because there's resistance by private health sector. We need to come on the side of Minister Aaron Motsoaledi and work with him to make sure that this campaign is fully implemented. We have done some rounds, comrades, across provinces. Our provincial secretary, Comrade Themba Mthembu, one day uyagula, ungena ku public hospital, which is an extremely important example. Ngise KwaZulu Natal ngithi hayi ithi ngiyobona unobhala wami ukuthi kuhambe njani. Usesibhedlela, mangena esibhedlela, I meet a rat. Rat, a massive one like a cat. It's a rodent, what they call it. Now I'm saying, gosh, what kind of hospital is this that my provincial secretary is sleeping in? When just entering here, I'm meeting a rat. It can't be our hospitals. What is that hospital in KwaZulu Natal? Was it Prince Mshien? What was it? Well, I can't hear you well. I can't hear well, but he knows the hospital. King Edward. That was a shocking moment. When I thought this was the West, I went to Alpheus Madiba district in Limpopo, Vembe. We visited Chidizini Hospital. There, it was even worse. We found snakes. The nurses have left and vacated the nursing rooms because of snakes, which afflicted that area. Our district, the Alpheus Madiba district, came on board. We want to thank them again. And came on board. We discussed with hospital management. They came to clean the hospital and also to cut grass. And that began to restore confidence for the nurses to come back to stay in hospital. But it was worse than that. We even found that there was no medication. So that is why the health committees that we have said must be established as part of our health campaign are important, because they can assist the party structures to understand the difficulties that our communities are going through. Because at aggregate level, when government reports, we report very good progress. But when you go to the nitty-gritties, you find that there are serious difficulties. That's the same thing that happened when we went to Mutse, for instance, when there was a crisis there in Mpumalanga. The people say they don't have water. And we don't understand this thing. This thing causes massive problem, crisis, that actually divided our people there. We visited that area as the Alliance leadership, Comrade Begin Chalinchali from Kosatu and Comrade Gwere Mantash of the ANC. We worked there for almost 7 days. We discovered that actually the source of the problem. In 1996, that was one of the first areas there that government rolled out the provision of running water, clean running water in the communities. The community even have this massive storage right inside them. But all of a sudden, there was no water flow into the communities. The taps were closed and welded. And later on, a tender was issued for what we call water cans, the water cans, these big trucks that carries water. And a tender was given to some councillors. It created a serious problem. Now, these councillors, instead of, when they are given a tender, for instance, let's say they will say you will supply 100, let's say 100 trucks per week that will come in and drop water here. They get that, but they only do 10 rounds. The community start complaining. There's no monitoring. Our comrade becomes arrogant. The same thing we found when we went to Winterfeld. Same problems. Corruption at the core of it. For public services, social services to our people, there must be no compromise from the Communist Party when our comrades are doing wrong. Whether it's our comrades in government or anyone else, we must never accept any wrongdoing against our people as a Communist Party. And this thing exposed to us how this particular question of the national health insurance, for instance, has been undermined. When we tried to intervene with the department, the health department, one comrade said, no, but comrade, I hear you. You are trying to do this thing, but you know, there's more problem. When we're attending the Chidizini crisis, for instance, they said, no, the provincial guys. There's more problem here at Polokwane Hospital. So we have to come out as a Communist Party, a strong campaign to make sure that the government can implement the national health insurance, and we need to support the minister in doing this, in implementing this particular program, and deal with bureaucracy in government that may collude with private sector to stall the appropriate rollout of this campaign that we struggled for as a Communist Party. Again, comrades, we are raising a campaign that should continue across the board on international struggles, solidarity programs and campaigns. NEHAO has been doing very well in this regard. We want to thank them, Comrade President of NEHAO. We should also recognize you as President of the World Federation of Trade Unions from our own shores. We appreciate that. I also know there's an Africa President of that section. When it comes to state of our provinces, comrades, we are indicating that all our provinces are still intact. This is one term where, for instance, no single province was disbanded. The chairperson of the National Disciplinary Committee, Comrade Jenny Schreiner, never had a single case referred to the National Disciplinary Committee for adjudication. The former chairperson was Comrade Ben Martins. And he says, yeah, then there must be a problem. She must go looking for these cases. But that was a good reflection, comrade, of a level of discipline within the ranks of the party. If we can consolidate that, it will remain an important moral force in our struggle. And therefore, it's very important for that. I'm not going to go into the details about provinces, comrade, provincial activities, provincial secretaries, please. Don't crucify me for this. It's too much detail. But we must thank our comrades. Even this is just a summary of many activities. We continue to give detailed reports every year through the augmented central committee that goes into each district and so forth and so forth. We try to summarize and take perhaps the most important to reflect in this Congress. Otherwise, we would have had to have several appendages to this report just to reflect provincial activities. Now, we want to also indicate, comrades, the state of our Revolutionary Alliance. The alliance is not in good shape as we speak. But at the same time, it's important to note that we should not just judge it by the moment. There's been a period, we are reporting over a period of time. We can say what has deteriorated the relationship in the alliance has been misbehavior by some of our comrades. In particular, I will talk to this particular question later on, of what happened since 2012 in the alliance relations. We have had several summits, for instance. One of the summits that took about 5 days, its main task was to discuss politics and nothing else. I must indicate to this Congress, on behalf of the 13th Congress Central Committee, that in that summit, the Communist Party had argued in the preparatory meetings of that summit that we want to discuss the notion of the second more radical phase of the National Democratic Revolution. That was our agenda item. And we prepared the document called Going to the Root. We presented it to the Alliance. That document speaks to this question of radical socio-economic transformation that is now so fashionable that if you don't talk about it, you are not a comrade. We put it on the agenda as a South African Communist Party. The Alliance had no appetite to engage with this. This item fell off. We went to a summit of exhaling, where we spoke out our minds. little did we know that actually the call for that engagement was deliberate. Instead of dealing with the real problem, we were then isolated, and we were now targeted as the Communist Party, even COSATU. Because COSATU in that meeting also spoke out clearly about the issues affecting our movement. The summit of 2015 resolved against corporate capture of the state as a threat to our national democratic revolution. This is an alliance meeting. A couple of months later, the president of the ANC addresses the PGC of the ANC in Gauteng. And he says, what is this thing called capture of the state? Are we captured? Basically, pouring cold water on a decision of the alliance, which he leads. Now, this is very critical, comrades, because when the challenges are deepening and the contradictions are sharpening inside our movement, the Communist Party will have done its best politically to provide clarity ideologically and to analyze the political moment. And we would have shared our ideas with our partners in the alliance. And when this thing happened, there was no one from the ANC leadership that defended the decision of the alliance. Even after we suffered a massive setback, and we are glad that at the ANC policy conference, the president reading the NEC's message alluded to this fact that indeed we suffered a setback in the local government election, because there's been a denial on this fact. And the reality is that losing over 70% of municipal budget is no child's play. Because a budget is an instrument in the hands of the democratic movement to radically transform the lives of the people. If you lose that kind of capacity, it's not a small thing. That is then the Communist Party put to the table again to the alliance the notion of the National Consultative Conference. It was again, they didn't agree with us. But then, people mustn't say, we didn't put these proposals on the table. We put this proposal on the table. It was not agreed. Later on, we heard the ANC Youth League saying, yes, we want the consultative conference. We will clean out the people we don't agree with. And we said, no, that's not what we called for. That's why we said, we don't want a shootout in an ANC conference where one faction fights against the other. We want a full conference of the African National Congress that can take decisions to strengthen the national democratic revolution and to strengthen itself as an instrument of the people of this country. This matter later on, as you know, will be taken up by the veterans of our movement, and they had discussions with the leadership of the ANC. At some point, according to our understanding, this was agreed. Later on, it was reverted to. So we'll talk this last question on this one when we talk about our engagements with the veterans of our movement. The General Secretary welcomed them yesterday here when he was opening Congress. But the bottom line, comrade, is to indicate that we had 2014 elections as well as 2016 elections. We fought them together as the alliance. The Communist Party, as usual, has always been a reliable ally of all these formations of our movement. And our cadres work tirelessly We want to thank you for that, for your tireless efforts to strengthen the National Democratic Revolution. Of course, last in 2016, we then convened Provincial Alliance Summit to try and deal with the problems that were afflicting the alliance, particularly alliance relations, particularly at the lower levels. Because despite that there were difficulties at the national level, for the first 3 years, the alliance was working very well, particularly responding to challenges. Implementation will be different. That is why, for instance, even when we withdrew Comrade Joyce from Parliament, we didn't make a big noise about it. But we had raised all the fundamental issues. And these are some of the things that, in the absence of dealing with them, they've contributed in the deterioration in the relationship within the alliance. We've had several bilateral with COSATU. Over these last 5 years, for instance, there was a period which was very, very difficult, where, for instance, we would have meetings with COSATU leadership and the General Secretary of COSATU will not arrive, continue to give different excuses. Because COSATU itself was undergoing a very difficult period. Now we have reconnected, we are able to have full meetings and so forth. We have agreed on a joint program that must be rolled out with all of COSATU affiliates. That is at the federation and party level. That program is important. The task team working on this program, which deals with a wide range of issues, including the national health insurance and against corporate capture of the state, for a living wage campaign. All of those are important campaigns that will be rolling out jointly with COSATU. Of course, comrades, we have always also begun to engage much more seriously with our comrades in SANCO. They have also undergone very difficult periods, but they are relatively stable. And the alliance has been able to engage with the issues afflicting SANCO particularly. And we've also dealt with some of the specific cases within the unions. The problems in SATAU, for instance, very, very difficult period for SATAU. Our General Secretary led the process to try and keep unity within SATAU, as we did with various processes when COSATU was facing difficulties. At some point, for instance, you'll remember that even NUMSA, before it was expelled, in fact, at the time that NUMSA was expelled from COSATU, we had met more with NUMSA than with any affiliate of COSATU as the Communist Party. We were working very hard to build that union and to unify that union and to keep it inside COSATU. But we now know that at the end, towards its expulsion, a narrative was created to the extent that we were responsible for it, when we were not. In fact, it was NUMSA at some point that issued in public the rejection to meet with us when we're continuing to engage with them. So this is very important for our members to know, because an impression is created outside and we get blamed for it when we're not responsible for it. We intervened at some point jointly with the office bearers of COSATU, President Dumo Dlamini, the General Secretary and other officials, the Deputy President and so forth, to try and keep SATAU together. We could not succeed. But that work to continue to build that union remains important, and many other affiliates of COSATU. We also, therefore, comrade, give you a feedback about related institutions, the Chris Hani Institute, Financial Sector Campaigns Coalition. Now, I must also tell you, because the Financial Sector Campaigns Coalition, Comrade Tibello, one comrade is here, he's a councillor at Nelson Mandela Metro. He's blacklisted. he can't buy a house. Comrade Tebello, when I finish speaking, this comrade must come here. You must meet him here. You and him must meet here, so that you are able to attend to that particular problem directly. Because there should be no reason for that. We fought very hard to remove the names of our people from the credit bureau. Unopala, when we launched this campaign on the transformation of the financial sector campaign, we even said at some point, good, no, you never knew good lento go to a credit bureau, a corner. And we actually even discovered that there were more than 11 credit bureaus. We thought it was one, they were sectoral. So we exposed them. This campaign has been significant for the working class. We have recently passed legislation through Comrade Rob at the DTI that wiped out these adverse records in the credit bureau. So that comrade who's now a councillor cannot be denied by the financial institutions to have a right to buy a house or to buy a car. It should not happen. So we are highlighting here the work of that particular campaign. This remains one of our most important campaigns, comrade, going forward. Because at the heart of this campaign was our struggle against monopoly capital in South Africa, which is highly financialized. The mining houses, for instance, most of them are owned by financial institutions. Many other big sectors of our economy are owned by the financial institutions. That is why confronting them was very important for the South African Communist Party. And proper credit must go to that campaigning ability of our structures across the country. So if legislation comes, I mean, what is this? The National Credit Act. No one can claim that legislation from a campaign point of view than the Communist Party. It's a campaign that protected the economy of this country and the lives of the majority of our people who would have been affected with the international or global financial crisis that affected all other economies. Here we're shielded a bit because of that particular campaign. When it is passed in government through our movement, in parliament, the Communist Party must not retreat because it has been the one campaigning for this particular program. We must claim it. There's a section there that I'm not going to go into on local government elections. As well as, safe to say, this area has also created some difficulties in our movement. We must find a mechanism to go to an election program and come out of that election program more united as a movement, particularly when we've also become victorious. We are such a funny movement. We go to an elections, we win, the movement gets divided. Because we use the election platform as an internal mechanism to fight against each other, to exclude one another. We must find a mechanism to unify ourselves around this question. So post-elections, our movement should remain united. We give you there, comrades, as well, a reflection of our National Congress, the Special National Congress, as well as the section that deals with international report, which I'm not going to go into in detail. Safe to say, the Africa Left Network Forum, which we helped to establish as a Communist Party, we must rebuild that particular movement and take full responsibility. We initiated this program jointly with the Swedish Left Party, which funded almost 30% of it. And it became such a successful program that their funding was going down year by year on the basis of interest by the continent to come on board. At some point, we decided to rotate the program across the continent, and ultimately it dissipated. We need to rebuild that, starting with the SADC region, and of course, continue to take up international work, particularly around many other issues, including the question that some of the questions we discussed here, including on Palestine. other way, comrade, that we want to indicate, tomorrow we'll be receiving an input from academics who work with the South African Council of Churches on the unburdening panel that they initiated as a consequence of corporate capture of the state dilemma. That program is extremely important for us, comrades. That is why we felt that you should understand the nature of this problem. Work with the people from credible South African institutions who worked on understanding this problem, researched it, analyzed it, and came to some conclusions. We want to go forward debating this question so that this phenomenon, which is a major threat to the national democratic revolution, can be fully confronted after our comprehensive understanding of its implication to our revolution. We also have engaged with the veterans of our movement, as I indicated. Our respect for them, that continues. The General Secretary spoke in the same context. The problems where they also have to chip in when our movement has been facing difficulties. One of the issues being raised, of course, is the whole question of factions inside the movement. We confronted this question head-on as a Communist Party, including engaging confidentially with the African National Congress. Because some of the comrades have said, you communists, why are you not dealing with these things internally? Creating an impression that we just decided that there's a faction, we go out and start talking about the factions.
No, but when you say confidential, you know you are live on television.
I thought it's our in-house thing. Okay. No, we have passed that stage nonetheless, where we've been where we raise these questions confidentially and they've not been attended to. That's the point, perhaps, that I was raising. But whatever it is, we confronted this matter, comrades, with the leadership of the movement. We specifically asked our president that he must come above the factions in order to unite our movement and play that role. If a leader of the movement can't do that, we will be riddled with problems. We reported specific things, even in our secretariat of the alliance. And some of these matters have not been attended to. And when that period entered, comrade, we then entered a period in which the alliance could not function. But that we have been functioning well over the years should not be disregarded. So there must be aggregate complement of the work of the alliance and isolate difficulties that we have suffered in the process or that we have encountered in the process and how the movement dealt with them. Some of them, for instance, there was just complete disregard to attend to them. For instance, the question of bulk buying of membership, the point that was raised here about the attack of the Communist Party in Mpumalanga. We have put these questions in the movement, for the movement to discuss in the Alliance Secretariat. When our comrades were being killed in Nchanga and Liblands, we put these matters for discussions in the meetings. Of course, the situation almost went out of control because there was no sense of agency to respond to these particular questions. We must continue to deal with this thing, comrades, post this Congress, to engage the alliance, to commit itself to respond to challenges afflicting our communities across the board. We made a call, comrades, for the president to step down. It was a call of the South African Communist Party Central Committee, started with the decision of the Politburo. After a considerable discussion, It was not just a one-day discussion and we came to a conclusion. It was a series of engagements until we reached a point where we felt that we cannot take it. That's when we announced we took this decision. When we took this decision, we asked the General Secretary to inform the Secretary General of the ANC, which he did. After 2 hours, we made it public. We thought that that would have accorded the possibility that the movement, the leadership, particularly the top 6 of the movement, would have been rounded up to be informed that the Communist Party, your ally, has taken this decision. Since we have taken that decision, there has not been a meeting between us and the ANC. COSATU further took the same decision. There's not been a meeting between us, COSATU, and the ANC and SANCO, the alliance, which again shows the level of paralysis that our movement now finds itself in. Because when allies, these are not just some people who have collected, organizations we have collected on the way. These are strategic allies in our revolution. When they've come to that kind of conclusion, there should be a sense of agency to deal with the problem. But the movement at the moment is incapacitated to do so. Hence, at the last Central Committee, we spoke to the fact that the postponed Alliance Political Council must be convened. Comrade Jeremy will also talk to this question tomorrow when he's presenting the report on the state and popular power. Because the Alliance Political Council was one of the mechanisms we responded with after the PE resolution on the party contesting elections. So we'll give an update as to what happened with this particular mechanism. But the greatest threat facing us, comrade, which has also afflicted particularly the deterioration of relationship in the alliance, is this question of parasitic bourgeoisie. At some point, there's an impression that there's a fight between the parasitic bourgeoisie and monopoly capital. Of course, there will always be a fight of capitals. And they were trying to draw the entire movement into this battleground. And the Communist Party had resisted that. But we have now come to a conclusion, comrades, that these parasites are a greater threat to the national democratic revolution. That if we can't deal with them, we will not be able to deal with monopoly capital as a whole. Yes. We felt, comrades, it's important, and we want to explain to you what this phenomena is by an example. This phenomenon of the parasites. The unburdening panel report and the academics report will reflect this question tomorrow. And equally, we have reflected on this question. I just want to explain the challenge that we face as a movement of these parasites. There's a parasite that lives in the sea. Its name is called Simotua exequa. Simotua exequa. Those who have done biology, they will know that it is from the isopod generation. It ain't go biology. This parasite, comrades, what it does, it enters, it's a parasite that lives in the sea and therefore on the sea creatures, particularly the fish. On the fish, it enters through the fish gills, locate itself there. Once it stabilizes, it moves to the tongue of the fish, perches itself on the tongue of the fish. and start sucking the blood of the fish. Yes. Until the fish's tongue atrophies. That is, until it withers away and just falls off. Somehow, miraculously, because this falling off period, the numbing process of sucking of the blood, it's like an official amputation of the fish's tongue. Once it has done that, and the tongue is cut off, is withered away and cut off, this parasite patches itself and becomes the prosthetic tongue of the fish. Now the fish needs the parasite to eat, and the parasite needs the fish to survive. That is why, comrade, the fight against the parasite is extremely important for the Communist Party. So, we move ahead against the parasites, and if we can't get hold of it, we must deal with the fish itself. That is why, comrade, we must understand how difficult is this particular problem. It's a complex situation. It's a complex period that we are also faced with as a movement. It doesn't just come so easy. It is in this regard that I understand that this 13th Congress Central Committee have done its best to try and understand and navigate this complex period that we are in. Because we have to confront these parasites. At the same time, we understood that somehow we need to save the life of the fish. Hence, when we confronted the Guptas, and we didn't go somewhere else, we went right inside the movement as we confronted this phenomenon of the parasite. Represented the human face of this motor exequor are the Guptas. That's the classical human face of this parasite, how they operate. That is why the necessity for our movement to cleanse itself is beyond necessary. It's more urgent. And to do that, the Communist Party must rise to the occasion. Now, comrades, this is a question of leadership as well. We are confronted by parasitic capital and external capital, largely monopoly capital. At the same time, for us to safeguard the national democratic revolution and our sovereignty, national sovereignty, we need to understand the state of the movement proper and take appropriate political decisions that will safeguard our revolution. The 13th Congress Central Committee, as the General Secretary was putting it today, I understand that perhaps some comrades or even some media people may have lost the gist of the message of the Central Committee, Nopal. And we must continuously restore that message. Our main and strategic task at the moment, as defined by the 13th Congress Central Committee, is to save the national democratic revolution. That's our number one task. And we have said, in doing so, saving the primary instrument of the national democratic revolution, the organ of the people, the African National Congress, becomes extremely important. That is why we as communists must never give up on the African National Congress. The working class must never give up on the African National Congress. Hence, we have elevated this question that in our relationship with the African National Congress, there must be appropriate reconfiguration of the alliance. And the General Secretary spoke at length on this thing. I felt that I needed to emphasize this particular point, comrades. I want to complete this section, comrades, by quoting Fidel Castro, who had this to say about largely moral decadence in the revolution. He says, I quote, "A true revolution will never permit impunity. If serious moral and other ills affect an individual, absolutely nobody in our homeland, no matter how great their merits or how high their position, may violate the principles and laws of the revolution with impunity. The greater their political or governmental responsibility, the more obliged they are to behave with dignity and honor, both publicly and privately." And he went on to say, in the case of Cuba, "The security of a country such as Cuba is, first of all, an ideological and political matter. It also includes people's unity with the revolution, their trust in the individuals who exercise power, the leader's prestige, moral and authority, and the example of honesty that the leaders set." Close quote. This is a primary benchmark for our revolution. It is not different from that of Cuba. If we can't take decisions when some amongst us overreach their limits of discipline within the movement, there's no way in which this revolution will be supported by the people. The people, comrades, as we have always emphasized, they are not robots. They are thinking beings. They observe, they see, they think. Don't think because we have got these positions that we have in our movement, in government, we can then begin to take our people for granted. That is why this 13th Congress Central Committee reaffirms the position. We are proposing here to reaffirm our position that we call for President Zuma to step down as President of the Republic. We think this will be an important contribution to our revolution. We also believe, comrade, that to keep him long will exacerbate the problems that we have. It will just postpone the boiling point of this crisis. And therefore, we are making this submission, comrades, and we are concluding by indicating that the last 5 years have been difficult years and years of challenges. And the next 5 years, we expect more work and more challenges from all of us. That party building work in general must continue, and there must be an emphasis to get more workers to participate in the life of the Communist Party. We must prepare ourselves for the proper celebration of the centenary of the Great October Socialist Revolution. The General Secretary spoke to this question at length yesterday. We have also articulated the celebrations across the country, main events in Gauteng and Moses Mabhida. These two provinces, all other provinces should roll out celebratory activities for that colossal victory of the working class against capitalism. And again, we must build, comrades, an independent, militant, revolutionary fighting party of the working class that should anchor itself on the program to create a better socialist South Africa. And on that, comrades, we should not apologize to anyone. The fighting cadres of our party should apologize to nobody in the struggle against capitalism and against its corruption. We want to close. We have attached in this report attendance register of the 13th Congress Central Committee. As categories, we always do this every single Central Committee or every augmented Central Committee. We are putting here aggregate reports, and we hope that comrades don't necessarily use that as the only tool to assess performance of members of the Central Committee. We have indicated that there are other various forms that we used to do that. We have called for intensification of political education within the party and training of our members with appropriate working class ideological orientation and campaigns, as well as skilling our members. This section of skilling our members, comrade, is extremely important. One of the sections I did not speak to is about higher education. That section, comrade, it's important. We have said the rollout of free higher education for the poor, it's an important one for our country. And if it rolls out all South Africans, the party should not oppose it necessarily. But we must always anchor it around the working class. And we want to encourage all our members to study, to go back to school, to discuss education in our branches, in our executive structures, and to support one another when we study. This is extremely important, comrade. We cannot serve the people of this country and the working class on common sense. And therefore, we want to thank some of the comrades who have been doing well. Our provincial secretary of the Young Communist League in the Northern Cape has just got his PhD. We want to thank you very much, comrade. Continue to study. Comrade Madala Masuku, a hard-working member of our Central Committee, has just got his second master's degree, Kamlude. We want to thank him as well. He's a deputy minister in government. He continues to study. There should be no member of the Communist Party who's not studying at one point or the other. Therefore, we must build this revolutionary party of the working class, comrades, that is united fundamentally on ideology and political strategy. That is extremely significant. The General Secretary indicated this in the political report. The need for strategic consistency and flexibility where appropriate, but strategic consistency all the time. As we deepen and develop independent influence and profile of the Communist Party on our society, we must build a stronger party organization, a revolutionary party of the working class. This will be an appropriate tribute to our four members, four bearers. That includes Nelson Mandela, Walter Sisulu, Chris Hani, Joe Slovo, and many others, Esther Basel, Ray Alexander Simon, and so forth. We want to close with the words of Comrade Fidel Castro, who said, I quote, "All and everything for the revolution and nothing against it." Amandla! Long live the Communist Party, long live! Forward to socialism, forward! Down with capitalism, down! Forward to a strong alliance, forward! Thank you very much, Comrade Chair.
Gobatina Zobaba Hauya Chisalum Zawalas Gobatina Zobaba Gobatina Zobaba Hobaba Oh, yashisa lomzabalas, gobatina zobaba. Pepe achis, Uyasnanase, hawuyashisa lomzabalaz, ngubathina zubaba. Pimpi yachis, amkasuyananase, hawuyashisa lomzabalaz, ngubathina zubaba. Kubathina zubaba, kubathina zubaba, webaba, webaba, hawuyachisa lomzabalaz, kubathina zubaba, kubathina zubaba, kubathina zubaba. Zobaba, Zobaba, hawuyashisa lomzabalaz, ngubathina zobaba. Impempe yachis, umqashi uyanqanqazela, hawuyashisa lomzabalaz, ngubathina zobaba. Impempe yachis, umqashi uyanqanqazela, hawuyashisa lomzabalaz, ngubathina zobaba. Ngubathina zobaba, ngubathina zobaba, 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 hawuyashisa lomzabalaz, ngubathina zobaba, ngubathina zobaba, ngubathina zobaba, 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 hawuyashisa lomzabalaz, ngubathina zobaba. Umthetho uyanqisa, umqashi uyanqanqazela, hayi amandla, amandla, amandla. Viva the SACP, viva. Viva Comrade Solmapaila, viva. Comrades, kunale ndoda eniyive igama layo okuthiwa nguSimon Muthu apha ebethetha ngayo uComrade Sol. Simon Muthu. It's very important that you take the right spelling for lo Simon Muthu or a parasite. It's CYMOTHA. X, and then a separate word is E. Diabona is saying name yakhe yesibini. EXGUA. uSimon Muthu lo. Elinye igama lakhe kuthiwa tongue eating louse. Wayiguguleke uyijonge ingozi kaSimon Muthu awuba ingakanani. Uzayibona apha efonini yakho. Ngenxa ke Minister of Fisheries akayazi akamazi uSimon Muthu waba ngumuntu waphi. Comrades, a red jacket is lost, the L size. It's written Kagaza, Greater Cockstead on the collar. It was taken from the chair, together with 2 choir book and documents. 2 choir books and documents. Nazi izipeks, comrades. Ezincinci, bulahlekelwe zizipeks dibana nathi. Thank you very much, Comrade Soli. We will now begin the discussion of this report. Abaninzi kindaba senimbonile lo Simon Mutwa. Comrades, we want to hear the branches now. This is the organization which must be strong on the ground, led by the branches, which must run campaigns. We don't want to hear Central Committee members. We want to hear the branches. But they must talk through their leadership, submit those through their leadership. We will then take the hands. Again, with due respect, we will request the media to recuse themselves. It's a closed session. Ziningi ngiphelile kudala ngiziqala.